You know when they say that if you repeat a word over and over in a loop pattern, it starts to slowly lose its meaning? I was thinking about other things that have for me the same effect, and I thought about two main topics. And these are the origin of the universe, basically why we are here, and the second one has to do about knowledge. So what does true mean? What's something that we can define and think of as true? As for the first thing I said, so why we are here and how it is that the universe was born or whatever, it's something that I tend to not think about as much because I have these sort of mini existential crises whenever I do. Generally, this happens when I'm taking a shower for whatever reason, maybe stimulated by the hot water. It activates my neuron in a way that I tend to think about the universe and how it came to be. But also when I read Descartes, I remember I had these existential moments in which I had to stop reading, close the book and do something else because it can be pretty rough on the psyche. You go against a brick wall, whatever the explanation you may give to yourself, but at least to me, you always end up in a mental cul-de-sac, basically. As for the, what it is true and what isn't true thing that I alluded earlier, there are moments in which you start to think about what you know and your knowledge and how we define things to be true or untrue and whether that is actually something that's actually factual. I don't know if that makes sense, or if it's just a thing we use to define things for practical reasons, but it isn't necessarily a substantial one, if that makes sense. So there is the, let's say, practical discovery of things, and I'm not saying that doesn't exist. So I can use mathematical tools paired with technology to analyze stuff, to theorize what the structure of an atom can be or could be, and so on. Those are experiments that we can do, and at least as far as we can tell, that's practical physical discoveries that we make. But I'm more so referring to the, let's say, the mental stability or the existential stability that this knowledge can confer and can give to a person. So like when you know stuff, you think that you know the world, you know how things work, and you feel secure, you feel stable, you feel as you have a control over what surrounds you, over the physical world that surrounds you. And although I think that's obviously something that we all have most of the time in our everyday lives, because otherwise we would be probably dysfunctional if we didn't have this sort of grasp, or we thought we had a grasp of things around us. So we have knowledge and we know how things behave and probably will behave in the future. Therefore, we have control also over the future and what will happen. So that gives you stability, that gives you quiet of mind and some sort of peacefulness. But also there are times in which I sort of think too much about this specific thing, and you're like, what is knowledge itself? So like when you read a book, especially when it's a book about more, let's say, philosophical subjects or more subjects that surround what are called the more softer sciences. People say stuff, people write stuff that they think are true, and people have their mental structure of what is true and what isn't. There's mental scaffolding of the world, basically, that they create and structure around the world. But also, is it true? You sometimes see people that are certain about stuff, and maybe people would say, well, our brain is designed to find problems and find solutions to that problem, not to find how real that problem is and how real the solution is, if that makes sense. We are more so a behavior species, or better, biological organisms are made more so to make processes, or you're always in a process organisms. So they find a barrier and they try to get over that barrier and resolve that problem that they have, more so than contemplate the problem itself. And so if you're trying to do that, you're just basically going against what you're able to do and what you are, let's say, structured to do in a physical sense, in a biological sense, as a biological organism. And that's why you always find these mental cul-de-sacs and mental blocks when you try to think about these things. You can use all the words that you want to describe the meaning of the universe and why we are here. And maybe more intelligent people than me could use physics to describe to me why it is so. But I have to be honest, I have friends that are very, very smart, more than me, that try to explain me these things. But at least for me, I always end up in the same pond, in the same, doubtful pond in my mind. So it's whatever it is. It is freeing in a way because it helps you see. I don't want to use the word the illusions because there are no illusions in that sense. But sometimes you see people that are so certain about what they know, and you may see them as being more capable or more intelligent than yourself. But that is only knowledge they've retained. Sometimes we define intelligence as just basically the action of our hippocampus, so our ability to retain information. So that's memory basically. So the more you know, the more you may seem intelligent. But actually knowing stuff or knowing the names of stuff and maybe using words to describe some stuff doesn't mean that you actually know it, if that makes sense. Or does it? Also because I think that even if you try to sort of meta-analyze this thing, you're not actually meta-analyzing it. So sort of analyzing the structure itself. So you're not actually analyzing the rules of reality because you're still in reality. So maybe you can't actually get out of this loop. Like you can't see the box from the outside, the box that is containing you. So you can always see it from the inside. You can always only define and describe what you think you see and what you think that box is structured and what it is made of. But you'll actually never be able to bypass your nature. So yeah, this video didn't have an end point nor a starting point. It was just something I sometimes like to think about and find to be very fascinating. How we can, think we know stuff and how certain we may at times seem when we think about the stuff and the things we know, and how ephemeral or sometimes how based on very unsolid ground that actually is. Because the only thing that we do or we should be doing as human beings is to respond to practical problems we find in our everyday lives and not necessarily give names and create concepts that are themselves defined by a series of words and a sort of a logical framework that we use to navigate these words. And that's something extra that we do as humans. And that's maybe the reason why as human beings we were able to create so much as a species, because we are able to analyze what we do and sort of build up an understanding of what surrounds us basically. But maybe at the core we are just made to solve practical problems that put in danger our survivability and our life, and so our species in general. And that's it. So whatever else you do, it can increase that probability. So for example, the fact that we have language and that enables us to better communicate and to better understand what surrounds us, or it seems like we better understand what surrounds us, it's just something that increases our survivability, our fitness as a species and as individuals. And the concept of things being truth or not, apart from, let's say, very direct, maybe practical, even physical things like touching a bottle or, feeling the solid ground I'm walking on. Other things, especially conceptual things, like all the various definitions that we can give, especially some of these, feel very much more as mental papers, castles, basically. And maybe even more physical concepts like what's movement, what's acceleration. Like we have equations that define what those things are, and we know that they in a way work because they are able to let us build stuff, build cities, build cars and whatever it is. But at the same time, that's there's sort of a feeling of something that humans created and sort of benefits their survivability, but also, is it true? I don't know, maybe I'm just delirious this morning, but that's all I wanted to say, and see you in the next video.